Shadows linger across Pennsylvania's oldest landscapes, places where time seems to pause, and questions echo louder than answers. Beneath forest canopies and buried in quiet valleys lie ancient mysteries that defy logic and resist history's touch. Strange stone formations, forgotten relics, and legends whispered for generations all point to something we still don't fully understand. What happened here long before the first records were written, and why does it still haunt the land today? Let's step deeper into the unknown and uncover what few dare to examine. Hidden among the rolling ridges of Berks County lies a place that feels quietly removed from the world around it. The Oley Hills site, an intricate arrangement of stone walls, perched boulders, and enigmatic rock formations, sits deep within the Pennsylvania woods, where the forest canopy filters the light into a muted, almost reverent glow. At first glance, it looks like a natural jumble of rock and land. But step closer, and the landscape begins to shift. Lines become too straight, stones too carefully balanced, patterns too deliberate to ignore. It is here, in this stillness, that the mystery begins. Archaeologists and historians have long noted that Oley Hills is unlike most prehistoric or colonial-era sites in the region. Instead of a single defining feature, the area contains a constellation of stone structures scattered across more than 40 acres. There are terrace-like steps carved into slopes, stone rings that seem to mark boundaries or directions, and large boulders positioned with uncanny precision. One of the most striking features is the balanced rock, a massive stone placed atop smaller supports, as if lifted and set by hands determined to defy gravity. The question is simple: whose hands were they? Mainstream researchers tend to view the site through a practical lens. Some propose that the walls and terraces were created by colonial farmers clearing the land for agriculture. Early settlers often rearranged rocks, building walls that crisscrossed the countryside. It's a familiar explanation, straightforward, grounded, and reasonable. Yet something about the Oley Hills arrangement resists that simplicity. The sheer effort required to maneuver some of these stones goes well beyond the typical work of clearing fields. Several of the formations appear in places with no agricultural purpose, deep in wooded areas never ideal for farming. And perhaps most intriguing is the geometry, alignments that hint at intentional placement rather than convenience. Then there is the argument that the site is an example of pre-contact Native American stonework. The Lenape, who once lived throughout the region, are known to have left behind rock features with ceremonial or territorial significance. Some indigenous groups used boulders and cairns to mark seasonal events, solstices, or pathways through the landscape. This interpretation carries weight, and many researchers believe it offers the most culturally grounded explanation. Yet even here, the Oley Hills site feels unusually complex. Its scale surpasses what is typically found in confirmed indigenous stone sites in the region. If it was ceremonial, what purpose could have required such a sprawling layout? A gathering place? A calendar? A spiritual map? And so the investigation deepens. Over the decades, observers have proposed more speculative theories, ideas that live on the edges of accepted history, but persist because they tap into the unshakable questions the site presents. Some suggest that Oley Hills may contain astronomical alignments, noting that certain stone rows and perched rocks appear to point toward sunrise or sunset positions during solstices. Others see patterns that resemble European megalithic structures, raising the controversial notion of pre-Columbian contact with cultures across the Atlantic. These theories are not widely endorsed, yet they remain part of the conversation because the site, in many ways, invites them. Still others look at the geology and wonder whether natural processes could produce the illusion of design. Could freeze-thaw cycles, gradual erosion, or the slow tilt of ancient bedrock create formations that humans might misinterpret as intentional? Could centuries of land use, logging, and shifting boundaries have blurred the lines between natural and cultural features? The forest here is old but not untouched. What is original and what is the result of generations of change? Even with these possibilities laid out, Oley Hills refuses to settle into a single narrative. Every explanation, practical, cultural, speculative, or geological, solves only part of the puzzle. The walls extend too far. The stones sit too precisely. The symmetry feels too deliberate. And yet, no definitive evidence has emerged to confirm any one theory. The site remains unclassified, unclaimed by any known culture, and unproven in its purpose. Walking through the area today, the quiet is almost overwhelming. There are moments when the forest seems to pause, as if holding its breath. The stones stand in the shadows, unchanged, unmoved, and unbothered by the centuries of debate that surround them. Whatever story they carry, they hold it close. And perhaps that is why the Oley Hills site endures, not just as a place, but as a question. A reminder that history is not always neat, that some truths resist discovery, and that the land itself sometimes keeps its secrets. What meaning lies behind these formations? Who shaped this landscape and for what reason? For now, the answers remain hidden among the stones, waiting for someone patient enough to listen. Continuing our journey from the enigmatic Oley Hills site, we move deeper into Pennsylvania's landscape of ancient mysteries, to a singular artifact that has perplexed historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts for generations: the Lenape Stone. Unlike sprawling stone sites or labyrinthine walls hidden in the forest, this object is intimate yet compelling, a small slab of slate etched with symbols that seem to carry a story just beyond our reach. Found in Berks County in the late 19th century, the Lenape Stone rests quietly in collections and photographs today, but its presence whispers of a past that refuses to be fully understood. The stone itself is unassuming at first glance. Rough, gray, and roughly rectangular, no more than a foot long. Yet the etchings on its surface immediately arrest attention. Carved with a series of intricate lines and figures, the markings appear to depict human figures, animals, and what some interpret as ceremonial or ritual scenes. There are suggestions of warfare, hunting, or spiritual rites, although no definitive interpretation exists. Some of the figures seem stylized, almost hieroglyphic, while others are disturbingly lifelike, capturing gestures or stances that hint at a story frozen in time. How did these images come to be, and what narrative were they meant to convey? Scholars and researchers initially approached the Lenape Stone cautiously. Mainstream accounts suggest it may have been created by the Lenape people, whose presence in the region dates back centuries. They were known to carve small artifacts, tools, and ceremonial objects from stone, bone, and wood. Could this stone have served as a teaching tool, a ritual object, or a record of important events? The alignment of some figures has led researchers to speculate that it might have marked significant cultural or spiritual moments in the life of the community, perhaps even serving as a mnemonic device to preserve oral histories. Yet, much about it remains opaque. There is no written record, no corroborating artifact, and no clear context for its use. Part of the enduring mystery stems from the stone's discovery. Unearthed in 1872 during farming operations, it was reportedly found within a small burial mound, a location already rich with historical significance. But controversy quickly followed. Skeptics questioned the authenticity of the stone, suggesting it might be a forgery, a Victorian-era creation designed to intrigue collectors and scholars. Even in the earliest reports, the artifact sparked heated debate. Some saw it as an invaluable glimpse into pre-contact life in Pennsylvania, others as a clever hoax. Scientific analysis in later decades has confirmed the age of the slate itself, but the exact age of the carvings remains uncertain. Could they have been inscribed centuries ago or much later? And if centuries ago, what tools and methods were used to etch these detailed scenes so precisely? The imagery itself invites endless interpretation. Figures appear in what some have described as battle formations, while others argue they resemble ceremonial dances or tribal gatherings. Animals are depicted alongside humans, deer, birds, and possibly canines, each seemingly symbolic yet defying simple explanation. Could these scenes represent mythological narratives, the moral lessons of a culture, or historical events memorialized in stone? Some researchers note stylistic parallels with other indigenous carvings across the Northeast, hinting at shared cultural motifs. Yet the Lenape Stone's level of detail and the apparent complexity of its scenes are unparalleled for the region, leaving many questions unanswered. Beyond the academic discourse lies a subtler, almost spiritual enigma. Hold the stone in your mind, imagining the hands that shaped it long before modern Pennsylvania existed. Who carved these figures and why? Did they intend for the stone to endure, or was it a personal, ephemeral creation that survived against the odds? And what did the original observers see in these etchings? Messages, warnings, prayers, or something else entirely? The more one studies the Lenape Stone, the more it resists certainty, teasing viewers and scholars alike with its silent complexity. Some fringe theories push the mystery even further. A few enthusiasts suggest that the carvings depict events beyond the realm of the ordinary. Astronomical phenomena, unrecorded conflicts, or even interactions with unknown visitors. These interpretations are speculative, of course, but they underscore a common thread. The Lenape Stone evokes questions that cannot be fully answered by conventional history alone. Its presence bridges the tangible and the imagined, grounding us in reality while hinting at a past that may never be fully accessible. Today, the stone rests quietly, often displayed in glass cases or captured in photographs, its gray surface illuminated just enough to reveal the delicate lines and figures. Yet no matter how closely it is studied, the Lenape Stone maintains an aura of quiet defiance. It is a relic, a puzzle, and a messenger all at once, one that reminds us of the limits of our knowledge and the richness of human history that lies just beyond the written record. And so, as we linger over its carvings and consider the hands that shaped them, the question remains: what truths, what stories, what rituals are hidden within this simple slab of slate? The Lenape Stone does not answer. It invites us to wonder. It invites us to imagine, and it whispers ever so softly that some mysteries endure not because they are unsolvable, but because they belong to a world we have only begun to glimpse. Flowing from the quiet, enigmatic story of the Lenape Stone, we now turn to a mystery that shook the skies above Pennsylvania, a strange event that blends eyewitness testimony, official investigation, and lingering speculation, the Kecksburg UFO incident. Unlike stone artifacts or prehistoric sites, this is a modern enigma, one that unfolded in December of 1965, when a fiery object streaked across the evening sky over multiple states before reportedly crashing near the small town of Kecksburg in southwestern Pennsylvania. The scene was at once ordinary and extraordinary. Snow-covered fields, pine forests heavy with frost, and the soft hum of a town settling into the quiet of winter, abruptly interrupted by something no one could immediately explain. Witnesses describe a brilliant, fiery streak, orange and red, trailing sparks across the horizon, arcing downwards with a force that shook the ground beneath them. Many ran outdoors to watch as it descended behind the hills, vanishing from view. Within hours, the small town became a magnet for curiosity and concern. Residents reported seeing strange metallic debris scattered across the landscape. Some spoke of a large acorn-shaped object, partially buried, its surface smooth and unmarked, yet undeniably crafted, unlike anything naturally occurring. How could such a precise shape appear in the woods without human hands? And what had caused it to descend so dramatically from the sky? The official reports, those that trickled through government channels and news outlets, offer one explanation: a meteor. Scientists from the United States Air Force and other agencies suggested that a bolide, a large meteor burning brightly as it entered the atmosphere, had caused the visual spectacle and perhaps deposited some debris in the surrounding forest. They noted that December skies were often the site of meteor showers, and that reports of glowing streaks were not unusual. From a purely scientific perspective, this explanation seemed plausible. Meteors enter the atmosphere at high speeds, burn brightly, and sometimes fragment upon impact. And yet the Kecksburg incident does not neatly fit this model. Multiple eyewitnesses insist they saw an object slow, controlled, and almost deliberate in its descent, unlike the chaotic tumble of a meteor. Military interest only deepened the mystery. Within hours of the incident, local residents noticed unusual activity: helicopters circling the area, military trucks blocking roads, and personnel cordoning off parts of the forest. Witnesses claim to have seen the acorn-shaped object lifted and loaded onto flatbed vehicles. Officially, this was described as a standard military recovery exercise or the retrieval of debris from the meteor event. But the secrecy and swiftness of the operation, combined with conflicting statements from authorities, left questions that remain unanswered decades later. What exactly did they recover? And why did the operation proceed with such urgency? For decades, the story of Kecksburg has persisted in the realm of speculation. UFO enthusiasts point to the unique shape of the object, a smooth metallic form reminiscent of depictions of alien craft in popular media. Some suggest that it was extraterrestrial in origin, brought to Earth by unknown forces. Others propose more nuanced possibilities: experimental military aircraft, a classified satellite, or remnants of technology not yet revealed to the public. Each theory has its advocates and detractors, and each leaves critical questions unresolved. Why did multiple eyewitnesses describe the object in such consistent detail? Why was the military so secretive? And how could something of that size disappear almost entirely without public explanation? Adding to the intrigue is the way the event embedded itself in local culture. The town of Kecksburg now commemorates the incident annually, drawing researchers, UFO enthusiasts, and curious travelers alike. Photographs, sketches, and first-hand accounts have been gathered over decades, forming a patchwork of memory and testimony that seems to confirm the event's significance, even if its true nature remains elusive. Scholars of folklore note that the Kecksburg incident is emblematic of the human fascination with the unknown, a modern-day myth shaped not by centuries, but by moments of collective uncertainty and wonder. Even scientific re-examinations, including radar records and archival government documents released decades later, provide only fragments of clarity. Some radar data indicate unusual flight patterns inconsistent with conventional aircraft. Other recovered materials are described only as metallic debris, leaving open questions about composition, origin, and purpose. The lack of definitive physical evidence leaves the Kecksburg UFO floating between fact and speculation, reality and legend. Standing today on the edge of the forest where the object reportedly came to rest, it is difficult not to feel a lingering sense of awe. Snow crunches underfoot, pine trees sway gently in the winter wind, and yet beneath the ordinary calm lies the echo of something extraordinary. A reminder that even in the modern world, mysteries can descend from the sky as swiftly as they capture the imagination. And so the Kecksburg incident endures as a puzzle without closure. What truly fell from the sky that December night? Was it a natural phenomenon, a human-made device, or something altogether beyond our understanding? The answers remain suspended in the winter air over southwestern Pennsylvania, waiting for a future witness, a discovery, or perhaps a revelation that may never come. The skies keep their secrets, and for those who look closely, the mystery of Kecksburg continues to whisper, quietly, insistently, that some truths are not meant to be easily explained. Flowing from the skies above Kecksburg, we return once more to the earth itself, to a site where Pennsylvania's history reaches far deeper than written records, a place where human presence stretches back thousands of years, and where each artifact unearthed carries the weight of untold stories. The Meadowcroft Rockshelter, tucked into a limestone bluff overlooking Cross Creek in southwestern Pennsylvania, is at once unassuming and profoundly enigmatic. From the outside, it is little more than a shallow cave, a rocky overhang above the creek, framed by the whispering pines and hardwoods of the surrounding forest. Yet within its modest confines lies evidence of one of the oldest, most intriguing human occupations in North America, a place where time, layered in soil and stone, seems to fold upon itself. Archaeologists first began systematic excavations at Meadowcroft in the 1970s, uncovering artifacts that challenged long-held assumptions about the timing of human migration into the Americas. Pottery shards, stone tools, hearths, and remnants of food all pointed to human activity stretching back as far as 16,000 years, or potentially even earlier. To put this in perspective, these dates predate the commonly accepted arrival of Paleo-Indians by thousands of years. For scholars, Meadowcroft is more than a simple shelter. It is a touchstone, a site that forces us to reconsider when and how the first people arrived in the New World. But with such ancient occupation comes ambiguity. Every layer of soil seems to whisper questions that resist definitive answers. The artifacts themselves tell fragments of a story. Flint knives and scrapers speak of hunting and preparation. Charred seeds and animal bones hint at diet and seasonal cycles. Stone tools suggest sophisticated knowledge of local resources. Yet what most captures the imagination are the patterns within the layers. The apparent organization of living space, the repeated use of specific hearths, and the possibility of ritual or symbolic behavior embedded in the selection of certain stones. Could this have been more than survival? Did these early inhabitants leave subtle marks of their culture, hints of beliefs or social structures that remain invisible to the modern eye? The mainstream interpretation situates Meadowcroft firmly within the Paleo-Indian tradition as one of the earliest known habitations in North America. Yet even this widely accepted view encounters resistance from the implications of radiocarbon dating. Some of the dates, when analyzed, suggest occupation that precedes the end of the last ice age. How did these people survive in a landscape dominated by glaciers and harsh climates? Were they part of a previously unknown migration route, following rivers and game across a land that was still emerging from ice and snow? The questions multiply, and each answer only opens new avenues of curiosity. Over the decades, speculation has grown alongside scientific investigation. Some researchers wonder if Meadowcroft could be evidence of a far earlier, forgotten wave of human migration, an entirely separate population from the Clovis culture traditionally credited with peopling North America. Others have noted the meticulous preservation of the site, suggesting that the Rockshelter itself might have served as more than a temporary refuge. Could it have been a semi-permanent settlement, a place where knowledge, skills, and stories were passed down across generations? The idea that this modest rock overhang could hold the key to understanding human adaptation at the dawn of North American history gives the site a quiet, almost cinematic gravity. Yet as compelling as these interpretations are, the mysteries persist. Some scholars raise the possibility of contamination in the dating samples, or geological shifts that might complicate the timeline. Still, the consistency of multiple dating methods lends weight to the idea that Meadowcroft is extraordinarily ancient. and while the tools and bones speak to daily life, they cannot fully answer questions of intention or meaning. What did the people here believe? What stories did they tell around their hearths? And why, over the millennia, did some of their traces survive while countless others vanished completely? Walking the site today, the shelter's low ceiling and weathered rock walls convey both intimacy and endurance. The creek murmurs softly nearby, just as it must have thousands of years ago. One can almost imagine the careful hands arranging stones for fires, scraping meat from bone, or shaping tools with painstaking precision. And yet, for every artifact that has survived, countless moments have been lost to time. The very act of survival leaves a record, but only fragments. The human stories, motivations, and daily struggles remain largely beyond reach. Fringe theories, too, have attached themselves to Meadowcroft. Some enthusiasts suggest that the artifacts hint at connections to transoceanic visitors, or even to cultures that existed earlier than conventionally acknowledged in Eurasia. While such claims remain speculative and controversial, their persistence underscores a central truth. Meadowcroft challenges our assumptions. It is a site that exists at the intersection of the known and the unknowable, of rigorous science and enduring wonder. And so, the Rockshelter endures as a silent witness to a distant past. Each layer of soil, each shard of pottery, and each flint tool is a conversation across millennia, a dialogue we can only partially understand. It reminds us that human history is not a straight line, but a tapestry, woven from countless lives, choices, and migrations, many of which remain hidden. As we linger in the shadow of Meadowcroft, questions surface as naturally as the creek bubbles below. Who were these earliest inhabitants of Pennsylvania, and how did they shape the land they called home? What knowledge, rituals, and stories were lost with time? And what other secrets might the Rockshelter still guard, buried beneath layers of earth, waiting for someone patient enough to uncover them? The mystery is far from resolved. It lingers, quiet and persistent, inviting us to look closer, think deeper, and wonder endlessly at the long, complex story of human presence in this ancient landscape. Continuing our journey through Pennsylvania's ancient and enigmatic past, we turn now to the banks of the Susquehanna River, where a weathered cliff rises sharply from the water's edge. Here, on the rugged face of Chickies Rock, lie a series of carvings that have puzzled historians, archaeologists, and local residents for generations, the Chickies Rock Petroglyphs. From a distance, the cliff seems simply a natural formation, its striated layers of quartzite catching the sunlight and casting long shadows over the river below. But as one approaches, the eye begins to discern something far more deliberate. Intricate patterns etched into the stone, silent impressions of hands long vanished, traces of human presence that resist easy explanation. The petroglyphs themselves are subtle yet striking. Arranged across several panels of exposed rock, the carvings include a variety of shapes: circles, spirals, stick-like figures, and geometric forms that appear almost symbolic in nature. Some observers interpret the patterns as representations of human or animal figures, while others see astronomical markers, maps, or spiritual symbols. Their style is inconsistent enough to suggest multiple periods of creation, yet coherent enough to hint at intentional design. How did these carvings come to be? And what was their purpose? Were they ceremonial, functional, or something else entirely? Historical records on Chickies Rock are sparse. The petroglyphs were first documented by locals and amateur archaeologists in the 19th century, though it is likely that they were known and revered long before that. Scholars have debated their origins, with mainstream interpretations often pointing to Native American groups who inhabited the Susquehanna Valley for thousands of years. Tribes, such as the Susquehannock and their predecessors, are known to have created rock carvings, using them as markers of territory, storytelling devices, or elements of ritual practice. The Chickies rock petroglyphs fit this tradition in many respects, but they also challenge it, presenting complexities that defy simple classification. One of the most perplexing features of the carvings is their orientation and placement. Unlike some petroglyphs found in open plains or accessible locations, these images are etched high on sheer rock faces, often in positions difficult to reach without climbing. Was this deliberate, to make the carvings visible only from specific vantage points, or to signify a sacred or protected space? Could the physical difficulty of accessing the carvings suggest that they were intended for select eyes only, a secret language preserved in stone? Such questions add an almost cinematic weight to the site, as if the rock itself guards its secrets. The imagery invites multiple interpretations. Spirals and circular motifs appear repeatedly, sometimes connected by lines or flanked by smaller enigmatic symbols. Some researchers see these as depictions of the sun, lunar cycles, or other celestial phenomena, a prehistoric calendar carved in stone. Others speculate that the patterns could represent journeys, hunting grounds, or social structures, a visual shorthand for communication across generations. Yet, despite decades of study, no consensus has emerged. The carvings remain open to interpretation, resisting the urge to be neatly categorized or definitively explained. Fringe theories have also taken hold over time, adding layers of intrigue to the Chickies rock narrative. A few suggest that the carvings may encode knowledge from visitors unknown to recorded history, ancient travelers from across oceans, or even contact with otherworldly intelligence. While these ideas remain speculative, their persistence highlights the way the petroglyphs evoke questions far larger than the images themselves. They seem to invite us to wonder not only about the people who carved them, but about the wider mysteries of human history and knowledge lost to time. Scientific study has provided some context, but not closure. Petroglyphs are notoriously difficult to date with precision, and the Chickies rock carvings are no exception. The stone shows signs of weathering, and erosion has blurred some lines while preserving others, leaving researchers to work with fragments of a larger story. Attempts to link the carvings to specific cultural or temporal frameworks provide valuable insights but also raise further questions. Could multiple generations have added to the designs over centuries? Did their meaning evolve with time, or were they preserved as static symbols of a forgotten culture? Even today, visiting Chickies Rock evokes a palpable sense of mystery. The river flows steadily below, indifferent to the carvings above, while wind and sunlight trace shifting patterns across the rock face. Standing before the petroglyphs, one is struck by the quiet deliberation of their makers, the patience and intention required to carve symbols into solid quartzite. There is an almost meditative quality to the experience, a sense that the carvings are not just artifacts but conduits to a human presence that long ago shaped, observed, and revered the same landscape. The Chickies rock petroglyphs endure as a puzzle written in stone, a series of gestures, marks, and symbols that refuse to yield all their secrets. What knowledge or messages did they contain? Were they ceremonial, mnemonic, territorial, or something we have yet to comprehend? And what might still lie hidden on this cliff face, obscured by time, weather, or human inattention? As we gaze at the carvings and consider the hands that made them, we are reminded that history is often a dialogue across millennia, and that some mysteries exist precisely because they resist final answers. Here, along the Susquehanna, the Chickies rock petroglyphs remain steadfast, waiting in silence for those willing to look closely, to question deeply, and to wonder endlessly about the lives, intentions, and mysteries of the people who left their mark upon this enduring stone. Flowing from the etched histories of Chickies Rock, we move now to another corner of Pennsylvania, where history itself seems to hover in shadows, leaving behind traces that are frustratingly incomplete. Here, along the rolling hills and river valleys of southwestern Pennsylvania, lies the legend of the lost fort of the Monongahela, a structure that may have once stood proudly as a bastion of defense, yet today leaves no confirmed physical footprint. Its story is woven from fragmentary records, oral histories, and the tantalizing possibility that an entire chapter of colonial-era Pennsylvania has slipped quietly into obscurity. The terrain where the fort is believed to have stood is both strategic and enigmatic. Overlooking a bend of the Monongahela River, the land is a mosaic of wooded hills, open fields, and rocky outcrops. From a distance, it appears deceptively ordinary, yet one can imagine the tactical advantage it would have offered. Commanding views of approaching forces, proximity to vital waterways, and natural barriers that could serve as protection. Early settlers and military strategists understood the significance of such locations, which makes the absence of concrete archaeological evidence all the more perplexing. Was the fort destroyed deliberately, abandoned in haste, or simply lost to the natural reclamation of the landscape? Historical accounts provide tantalizing but incomplete glimpses. References appear in colonial records and journals, often passing mentions of a fortification erected to guard trade routes and frontier settlements against Native American attacks or rival colonial powers. Some documents suggest it may have been constructed by European settlers, possibly in the early 18th century, while other sources imply indigenous groups may have fortified or used the site at different times. However, the records are inconsistent. Names vary, locations shift, and dates conflict. Unlike the more prominent forts of Pennsylvania, no detailed plans, maps, or contemporary illustrations survive. For historians, this raises a pressing question. How does a fort so significant in local lore vanish so completely from the documentary record? Excavations and surveys of the suspected area have yielded ambiguous results. A few fragments of stone and timber were found, but nothing conclusively linked to a fortification. Some researchers suggest that if a fort did exist, it may have been a temporary or modest structure, constructed of wood, quickly dismantled or decayed, leaving behind almost no trace. Yet others argue that the scale implied by historical accounts would have left some enduring evidence, defensive earthworks, post holes, or foundations detectable beneath the soil. The discrepancy between the historical mentions and the physical record fuels speculation and heightens the sense of mystery. The lost fort of the Monongahela has attracted not only historians, but also enthusiasts of the unexplained. Local folklore imbues the site with an almost spectral quality, telling stories of strange lights along the river at night, of faint echoes of cannon fire carried on the wind, and of artifacts that appear mysteriously in private collections without provenance. Some suggest the fort was part of a network of secret colonial installations, used for covert purposes that were never fully documented, perhaps linked to early trade, smuggling, or clandestine military operations. Could this be a case where history deliberately shrouded itself in secrecy, leaving only whispers for later generations to follow? Fringe theories deepen the intrigue. A handful of researchers propose that the fort may have connections beyond the conventional colonial narrative, perhaps tied to early European explorers whose movements predated official settlement, or to cross-cultural interactions with indigenous groups that went unrecorded in mainstream accounts. While evidence for these ideas is circumstantial at best, they persist because the fort itself offers so little clarity. Its very absence invites speculation, and the unknown becomes as compelling as any documented history. The landscape itself seems to reinforce the mystery. Rolling hills and dense woods have reclaimed the area, and the Monongahela River continues its silent course, indifferent to centuries of human struggle. Hikers and amateur historians who explore the terrain often speak of a strange feeling, an ineffable sense that the land holds stories that cannot be fully retrieved. Even the topography seems to whisper the memory of fortifications that may have once existed, suggesting that the Earth itself can retain echoes of human activity long after physical structures have vanished. Some artifacts found nearby, a handful of musket balls, fragments of ceramics, and carved wooden pieces, are tantalizingly suggestive, yet none can be definitively linked to a formal fortification. Could these scattered remnants represent evidence of the lost fort, or are they simply traces of everyday life along the frontier? Each interpretation carries its own assumptions, and each leads to further questions. How many structures might have existed that left no discernible mark? How do we reconstruct history when the physical record is almost entirely absent? Standing today on the suspected site, it is easy to imagine the fort in its prime. Timber walls lined with sentries, the bustle of frontier life, the tension of a region contested by multiple powers. And yet, when the imagination steps aside, there is only the quiet rustle of leaves, the gentle sweep of the river, and the awareness that time has erased nearly all evidence of what once stood there. The fort is real, or perhaps it was real, its story preserved more in memory, rumor, and historical illusion than in stone or earth. The lost fort of the Monongahela endures as a puzzle poised between history and legend. Was it a modest defensive outpost, abandoned and reclaimed by nature? Or a secret installation whose records were deliberately obscured, its existence only faintly acknowledged in fragmented accounts? And perhaps most compellingly, what other remnants, undiscovered beneath layers of soil and forest, might lie hidden, waiting for someone patient and observant enough to uncover them? The mystery remains, silent and persistent, inviting us to imagine the lives and events that unfolded here long before modern Pennsylvania took shape.